It is not.
There like a sign thing? I think so.
Yes.
Hello.
In person. So the parking pass is just here as you enter. Show the paper. Okay. They'll probably take it from here. Okay, cool. Hello. Hi, Sale. Hello.
Yeah.
Everybody looks so different.
If I stop the recording, I start.
Murray's right behind me. He was in the parking lot.
Oh, good.
Okay. So today's meeting of the Tax Review Commission is called to order. It is 12:03. Do we have any public testimony? Okay, I don't see any members of the public. But it is nice to be here live and in person. So the next item on our agenda is approval of the minutes of December 8th, 2021. You had a chance to review them. Are there any amendments? Thank you, Scott. Can I have a second? Thanks, Sale. Let's see, we'll go. Scott. Aye or nay? Yes.
Oh, yes.
Kate. Yes. Sale. Murray. Bolton. Chair votes yes. Okay, meeting minutes are approved. So on to the final approval for our report. So there are several aspects of this that we need to go over. And you have in your packet here several different items, including, I believe, draft 3. And then there is a redlined copy of Seth's comments. So let's take up Seth's edits first. Did everybody get a chance to read them?
Could I just basically go over and kind of give a synopsis of what I was trying to do with each one of them? So there's a couple little words here and there, so I think that's pretty fine. So I think there's 3 main things I just wanted to bring up here. And one is taxing carbon is not a violation of sound tax principles whatsoever. And so what I was really trying to do, this was an effort to like synchronize that part and really just beef it up. And just, my econ professor kicked in and I said, we could paint this all a little bit more according to economic logic. There was no intention of like changing anything substantive. It was just kind of making it a little bit more coherent. So that was the first part. And we can go, if you guys have any particular questions or issues with that, that was my intention. The second part was when we were looking at the progressivity and regressivity. And one of the major intentions I was trying to get across during a lot of the lectures and stuff is like, you guys have assessed the tax system as a whole, right? And so when, you're looking at the regressivity of the GET, when we offset that is through individual, tax credits to the individual income tax, right? So my attempt was say like, okay, let's look at rather than just only focusing on 2 of the major tax types and say this is this and this is this, and it just depends on how you look at it. I think it's valuable to look at the tax system as in its entirety to understand whether it is progressive or regressive. So that was like my attempt with that. And then the third part was with like the carbon tax. So there was a couple wordings about like people are better off. And I just was trying to insert a little bit of more guarded language because in my experience, everybody says, okay, carbon tax, great, works in theory, but there are really people that are going to be worse off from this in every single income decile, right? So the reality is, and this is my experience, people are all for carbon tax, but when you figure out the few commuters from Y and I are going to bear a disproportionate part of the burden, people start questioning this, right? And so my recommendation, what I was trying to do there is just be honest about, like there will be winners and losers, at least initially, and then over time, people are supposed to adjust their behavior to the price mechanism. But I would really encourage, like, it is not totally sanguine thinking to say everybody will be better off and so we can move on, right? And so that, it wasn't to say that, and just to make the language a little bit more technically guarded than saying that, so, and for, then saying that everybody's better off. As well as the, and we can, there are some issues about like the assumptions, and if we write the tourists, their spending and their who's better off. And this is just my take, and you guys are welcome to do whatever you want, but it's based on, that was based on the assumption that we're taxing aviation fuel, right? And that you could redistribute some of the gains of the aviation fuel.
She did both versions.
Yeah. So again, it's super technical language. It's just, my thing is, in order to have a really strong report, you just want to have it so people can't be like, oh, like, look, this is what you said, and this is obviously not true, right? So I was just trying to insert a little bit more, some like technically nuanced language in there, so people can't call you guys out and say, this is not what it's saying. So those are the three main points I was trying to make.
Yeah, I think Jonathan and I exchanged some language that softened it up a little bit. So I think on one hand, the issue is that all 5 income quintiles on average or in aggregate, or however you want to caveat it, are better off from a welfare standpoint. But that is not the same, to your point, as assuring that every single family in Hawaii will be better off. That's not, there's no guarantee like that. But I also want to make sure that logically, it does seem at first, if you say, well, if you give 20% of the money to the government, then how can people be better off? And that's largely from the tourist side that pay in, but they don't get the money back. So I think we preserved the integrity of what she found, which is on average or on aggregate, all 5 income quintiles are better off. But it's not the same thing as a guarantee that every single family in Hawaii will be better off. Because yeah, if you're a gas guzzler or you run a really energy intensive business, then you could be worse off. But at an aggregate level or an average level, you're better off. Some caveating makes sense.
Any other comment?
Oh, I'm sorry, this is probably out of order and I apologize. I sent an email right before this meeting. We haven't been doing our discussion about outreach with people publicly. Is that still something we should be doing or commenting on? Like when we talk to someone about a policy?
Yes.
Yeah, so I talked to Senator Rhodes today about the carbon tax. He's very interested. He supported that legislation in the past, and he's very curious to know when this report will be official and out. So once we know that, he'd love to hear that.
Good. Thank you. And so, yeah, we will talk about next steps after we approve this.
Just want to make sure if that had to be disclosed, that it was taken care of.
I appreciate your additional edits, and I think that you made it clearer from your expert point of view how we should be framing those issues. So thank you, and I think we should accept that in our report.
I have one question on I think the carbon tax changes were good. I like that. I think a lot of the changes help clean it up for me. But the issue of progressivity, and it's hard for me to see because on the paper copy, hanging out at the end there, there's just this statement.
Oh, yeah.
State, I think that's supposed to be state, tax system is progressive. I'm not sure where that goes. And then later on, we say what I think is maybe an accurate statement, which is the progressivity of the overall tax system is much more complex and beyond the scope of the discussion, right? So I get that the income tax is progressive and the GET is regressive, but I don't. And then I'm confused how we can just say the overall state tax system is progressive, right? And I'm not sure where that goes either. I'm not sure.
Yeah. So if we look at it doesn't have a name yet, but in this graph whatsoever. So this graph actually, I presented this in one of the previous presentations. It actually takes in every single tax at the state. So that includes the motor vehicle tax, that includes the individual income tax, all the credits, that includes the GET, alcohol taxes, everything. And we created, like, we looked at the progressivity of the statute. So we look at vertical equity, define vertical equity by like the proportion of who pays, and in a progressive tax structure, the higher income people pay a larger percentage of their income and a lower income. This is our best, you know, I've looked at this a bunch of times, and this is our best estimate. So I think it's pretty, by the definitions put out on progressivity. Now, that does not mean that it should not be more progressive or less progressive, right? I'm just saying as a definitional issue, it is, right? So what I was really trying to point out in the earlier thing is like progressivity is a values. There's an element of
I
values,
thought that
right?
was both,
Yeah, so if we feel, if the, you know, if the commission feels like there's an opportunity to make the tax structure more progressive because of other realities, that by all means, you guys should do that, right? But just by definitional terms, and that's kind of like the point of view I was taking, is it is a progressive tax structure. Should it be more progressive or less progressive? That is the purview of the commission.
And didn't you show in one of your briefings to us, I thought you showed almost like a ranking of progressivity across like the 50 states. I feel like we were like in the top 10 somewhere. or
Yeah,
something like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
So
Probably
that
top
also makes the
5.
statement that it's not just that the line slopes upward in terms of share of income, but also compared to other 50 states, we are in the more progressive side of that, yeah.
Is it possible to amend this sentence in some way to show that the overall balance of all taxes is progressive?
Yeah.
So some are regressive, some are progressive. Overall, it's a progressive slope.
Absolutely, and that's why I wanted to get it across. So I'm happy to work with Jonathan on language that would accomplish that, and that's what I was trying to get across, right? Is like, you really want to look at tax system as a whole, right? Because there was also the talk is like, oh, we can't make the GET less progressive. Well, you could, right? I mean, you could exempt all food, groceries, and we see that a lot in all these necessities. That ends up being a really expensive tax cut because we all spend money and it's not very targeted. Right. So there is ways to get rid of the GET regressivity, but is that the best way to do that? And so the whole idea is like, when you look at the tax system as a whole, it's a lot easier to come up with the most efficient ways of accomplishing the social goals that you guys want to accomplish. And that's what I was trying to communicate. And I'm happy to talk, like come up with language to make it that even clearer with Jonathan.
Yeah, so that's great, yeah.
Okay.
Do you think it's useful to add the comparison to other states? Do you think that's helpful? Because that actually I thought was really interesting. What you presented is like, if we're like in the top 10 most progressive, that's fairly progressive. Doesn't mean it couldn't be more, but that gave me a gauge in terms of where we were. But is that helpful or is that beyond the scope of what we're doing as a TRC?
It's also not a view shared by all, so, so I'm just.
Sorry, what's the view?
That we are progressive. I mean, there are some other analysts out there that don't believe we are that progressive, right? And you actually referred to that one.
Yeah, we talk about that.
So,
I thought it was a fairly objective measure of the share of your income you pay in taxes. Is it not objective?
Well, again, they look at, I don't know how they do it, but they get up to like 12% regressive or like effective tax rates for the GET. And this is the tax. So what they do is they're doing everything at, the reason why I think it doesn't work that well, and this is my opinion, is they're applying the same methodology for all states. And since the GET is really unique and its formation, you can't evaluate it exactly like a sales tax. And that's kind of like the issue. And then the other thing is like their property tax, they include property taxes. The property taxes make it even more regressive because something to do with renters. But like that's just that's the,
it's a different method.
yeah, it's a different methodology, and you can talk about methodology all you want, but the more you look at it, it is. And then the other issue, and that was emerged in the footnote, is like regressivity is not necessarily a bad thing in terms of GET, right? I mean, ideally, if we could double the consumption, like if we just did double the in-kind transfers to low-income households, right? That would mean their that would make the GET more regressive, right? Because they're consuming more than their income. And so that's the other point I was trying to make. And I just want to be clear, I've never tried to, if you thought I've ever tried to advocate for a specific tax policy, that has never been my intention, right? I want to be here as technical support for you guys. But the whole point was regressivity is not necessarily disadvantageous to low income households, right? Because if you really were allowing people to say, okay, your income is $10,000, but we're going to allow you to consume $20,000 a year. That's why, you know, particularly at these lower levels, the GET has an effective rate that's higher than the nominal rate, right? And so I just wanted to point that out, that, you know, we can say the regressivity, but regressivity is, and what I was trying to make is like, that could be an outcome of a progressive social agenda where you're providing more and more people, and that's not necessarily that, you know.
Regarding adding the thing about where we stack up against other states, since we are not all in agreement, I suggest that we just leave that out. Any other comments about Seth's edits? If not, why don't we go on to draft 3? Are there any questions or comments on that?
I had some teeny tiny nits and nats that I sent in a file, was it yesterday? It was like 2 or 3 little typo things, real small stuff, nothing substantive.
I do want to say that I can't help myself from editing. And so I sent some proposed edits to Jonathan. And I suggest that anybody else who wants to do that can send proposed edits to Jonathan. And Jonathan, you can decide which of them you want to incorporate, which of them you want to just dismiss, because I think you have done such a great job of this report overall.
Yeah, I got yours yesterday and I kind of made them, and then I got Seth's and I kind of worked that into.
Okay.
So I'm saying that just to say I'm starting from 0, so don't feel like you're just piling on my draft. Send it in if you have.
So long as it's done in track changes, so you can.
That would really help.
Yeah. Great. Let's move on then to, let's see, where are we? The masthead and executive summary. Starting with the executive summary, I apologize. I just put this together yesterday. And I suggest that we consider this as opposed to the one that Jonathan put together, just because I think that it provides kind of the context in which we are making these recommendations, maybe making our recommendations a little bit more compelling. Also, very briefly, itemizes the 8 recommendations and puts the consequences all on 2 pages.
Clarification, is it the 2020, 2021?
It is the commission of 2020 to 20.
Oh,
So you do it every 5 years.
Is that how we're gonna do it?
Did they just do 2?
15 to 17.
Oh, okay. So then it do 20, 23.
Having not read this yet, is how, because this is not what was in the last version that Jonathan said, right?
No.
So do we lose, so I haven't had a chance to review this, do we lose anything substantive, or is this just a reordering of what we already had? I like the idea of moving up the estimates to the front, so if they only read the first 2 pages, they get the gist of it. I like that idea.
yeah.
I just want to make sure, I guess what I'm saying is I like the idea of this being all in 2 pages to some extent, but I also like what I read before the Jonathan wrote. I'm just trying to figure out, having not read this yet, are we losing anything in between the 2 versions?
Yeah. Well, I did this before I read Jonathan's version. So Jonathan, can you comment on that?
Sure. This one has, this is best. This one has bulleted all 8. Mine is, I grabbed the conclusion. Actually missing something. This one has it. So I would say it's the opposite. Mine is actually missing the increase of. As far as executive summary goes, this one
This covers more.
looks and feels a lot more like. Okay. Definitely has all the.
Yeah, and I like the validity, the references.
Less person going to sleep, right?
Yeah. I just thought it was kind of nice.
And shall we, is there consensus that we can use this executive summary with Jonathan's, you know, you get edited and bring in
Yeah, the
things
final
I may have missed from your summary.
On that topic, are we all gonna vote?
I'm sorry?
Are we all gonna vote or something? I'm sorry.
Yes, I think we should. Are there any other changes, edits, proposals, anything else that we need to bring into this before we take a final vote on it?
I have
Yes,
one.
yes, okay.
Just on the same topic, substantive executive summary, do you want to change to a very formalistic, simple conclusion, like conclusory remarks kind of thing? That's something that tax review commissions have done, if they have a nice substantive executive summary. Because if you have an executive summary, then you have a conclusion.
Yeah, you're saying the same thing twice, basically.
Pretty much. That's the challenge I found when I was trying to draft it.
The reward for anybody who gets to the end.
Yeah, you're reading the same thing again, or it can just be a paragraph, conclusory remarks. I drafted that, but it's very simple. It's basically what Director Troy wrote 10 years ago. When I did it.
It must be good.
Yeah. It's very appropriate. So I guess that's just a question. If you want a substantive conclusion as well, I can work on that, or I can use the one I have and kind of try to make it less redundant. Or if you want to go with simple.
Any thoughts on that?
I think more brief, oh, sorry, go ahead.
When I say substantive, I mean that the best executive summary as amended would be at the front. And then the back would be.
take this conclusion off.
That's what I did in the executive summary I sent yesterday. But if we use this as best executive summary, we could use my conclusion that I had in my original draft 3 as a what I'm calling a substantive conclusion, kind of a restatement of everything. Or the conclusion could be replaced with just a simple paragraph that says, you know, we the commission have this task entrusted to us, and find it helpful, stuff like that. That's the 2 options.
So I propose that we use my executive summary and retain the conclusion in draft 3.
You're gonna take up the table.
Stay in there.
Way I come to think of it is like executive summary is all extra, right? So you still want the same table in the document because if not, you should be able to pull the executive summary off and the document should stand there. Present all the information.
Right.
Agree with that.
Okay, so are there any other issues that we have to take care of before we?
So what is the process? Jonathan is gonna make these changes and get another final look at it.
I propose that we vote on this version, and if there are any non-substantive changes that are made based on edits that we submit to Jonathan, we'll just, those will be acceptable to us.
Just for so it's on the record. Would that include the comments that I made?
Yes, Yes, okay, so then the motion that I guess we need to make is accepting essentially draft 3 with any additional non-substantive edits that might be submitted, including, however, Seth's edits with any additional ones we discussed, the balance of the tax system is progressive, not just, a stark statement. We include the executive summary that I drafted and the conclusion that is in 3. I think that takes care of all of the report itself. Okay, so with all of those things, can I have a motion to approve our final report?
So moved.
Kate? Second, was that you, Murray?
It was.
See, I can't see your lips moving.
Yeah.
Okay, again, vote approval or non. Scott?
Approved.
Kate? Sale? Murray? Holden? Chair votes approve.
So in the final, we won't see any track change in the final document. We'll see a track change.
So after today, you can consolidate the changes that we just discussed, send it out again to everybody for any other last minute urgent edits, which you will have discretion over whether you include them or not in the final version. And then when you have a final version, send that out as the final.
And what is that approximately? What is that approximately? The last any additional
Well.
yesterday?
So
Almost.
so do you have the edits that we talked about today, or you and Seth
Yeah,
will
so I-
agree on some other things? Is anybody planning to submit any suggested edits?
All I'm gonna do is, I haven't read it yet, is read your 2-page executive summary. I doubt anything would be substantive, it would just be nits and nats, if anything. Probably nothing, but if I see some little nit and nat, my mom was an English teacher, I can't help myself.
Yeah, same here.
So it would be very non-substantive if I do anything at all, and I do that today or not at all, so you won't have to wait for it.
So you are gonna get, based on what the chair just said, you are gonna get another version.
Yes.
What I've done so far since yesterday, I got yours, I put yours in, and I put a bunch of steps in, and that's for my own personal running thing. That's come true, so that's a good thing, but I didn't do track changes. Is that okay if that comes out clean?
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah,
'Cause I don't wanna go back and.
because that's essentially this version clean,
Yeah.
essentially.
Yeah. with
And
the-
so, yeah. I think that makes sense.
To get that.
Okay, great.
But I mean, the date, the reason I'm a little bit hesitant is the date is the 20th, right? That's Monday.
Is that the
Based on
date?
the- based on the-
Yes, let's talk about what happens.
And based on the scope of work, that's that. I haven't looked at the calendar to figure if it's 20 days or 30 days or something.
It's 30.
It's 30? Okay, so I don't know what day that is, if that's the 20th.
What day is the web start?
Third Wednesday in January.
So it's like 20 something.
So
19.
that's the 18th.
That's why it's the 20th. It's the 20th is Monday, so the 19th.
Okay.
I can do
So you will send out the revisions. We will immediately read through it and make any necessary edits. You will finish it up and have it done and out to us on Monday. Okay. Okay, so we also need to deal with the cover sheet. And if lately the reports, they have the seal of the state on page 1, and then they have this, so we need to provide Jonathan with our titles from our day jobs. What's the easiest way for us to provide those to you? Or do you already have that information? Okay, so why don't we email them to you?
Email
Okay.
Rick. And like middle initial if you want that kind of stuff.
Please include the middle initial, because it's kind of like, that's how the state does things.
You want our middle initials?
I don't remember.
Is this organization and title? Or title?
I believe it had a title and organization.
It's usually a title, comma.
Email's the preferred choice.
Okay, and then this will be submitted on the 20th to the legislature?
Does it then become immediately available to the legislature? Or they can just grab it?
That'll be a public document or do.
Okay.
And we'll publish it on the website within the day.
So one of the concerns I got from Senator Rhodes is like there's 2 or 3 probably gonna be bills out there already on the carbon tax. And they'd like to see, you know, what this new study, this follow-on study from Dr. Kaufman and what the TRC says. But he's like, if I don't get it in time, he can't make any modifications.
Chair, if I may, in the past, we will do the transmittals to whoever's supposed to get it, including the governor. And the president and the speaker of the house, probably whatever the list is, that we'll go ahead and transmit it right away. Usually after that, you should be asking for a hearing, so you can present your report. It'll be, then once you do that, you've fulfilled your obligation. If they did give us a hearing, it's a joint hearing between the House and the Senate committees to present our report. Also, I don't know if you've done recently, but when I was chair, then every single one of your proposals, they will draft into legislation. And then the second thing you would do is ask for a hearing on those particular proposals. So at least you can get at least one hearing for all your proposals, right? And then once the public testimony comes in, then your ideas now become to life. The pros and the cons, and you'll hear all of this. And that would be the end of your obligation to the state. I think at least want every one of your proposals in a bill so it can be heard publicly. And again, in my personal philosophy, the public hearing process is the greatest in the world. So you allow people to voice their particular opinion.
Sorry to be clear, do we have to take action to get that hearing or that happens automatically?
Usually the chair will ask the president or the speaker to arrange for that. I don't see why they would say no.
I'm just trying to figure out how it works.
Introducing the bill.
Is it the president or is it the money chair?
Well, for me, I know Calvin did all mine, so the speaker of the house took it all. And he can put in bills all the way to the opening day and after. Right? But you would like to at least have all your ideas vetted publicly, right? Of course, first reading is just functional, but the second reading, you'll probably go to the money committee chairs and at least get one hearing out of it where you present your ideas to the state.
So you were saying that we should request a hearing of our report, and that should go to the speaker and the president. Okay, and then we should also ask them or the money chairs about.
I think it can be included all in that.
Okay.
Letter. And I'm sure Seth can draft that email or that letter for you.
Okay.
Formal email from the commission to the legislature. Yeah, and they'll draft those letters for you. Sign it.
Okay, great, thank you. Is there anything else that we need? I just want to say thank you for all of your hard work. I went to the website today and I looked at all of the meetings, and this is our 21st meeting since we first convened on November 18th, 2020. So this is our third meeting just this month. So we have done a lot of work on this. And I just also want to thank staff, Seth, for your expertise and your support always. Rick, for making sure that we got all of the information and bombarded you with all kinds of requests. And thank you for timely support there. And Jonathan, for the great work that you've done in putting together all these disparate ideas into a final report. So
Really short time too.
yeah.
I felt guilty every time. It's like,
And
oh,
director for all of the support and your experience in getting through this process too.
Chair, if I may just say a few words. Now that you've served on the board and commission and had so much fun, you always at the state level have a very difficult time getting people to volunteer. And now you know what the commitment is and the seriousness of these boards. Please, volunteer for the revenue, set on the board, the Council of Revenue, right? And then Elton, the Board of Accountancy, right? And all the different task force and committees, Board of Regions, if you guys are interested in education, we always have a very difficult time getting people to volunteer. And now you know why. Now you know why. It's not, it's very, very time consuming, but we do need people who want to get involved, right? And you know the process now. And that means you're seasoned board members. So as my little advertisement on behalf of the governor, please volunteer. And if you do want to volunteer for any particular board or commission, just see me and I'll be more than glad to put your name in and stick it up there.
Stick it up there, being the key word.
Make sure you're on, because seasoned board members are very, very difficult. Thank you.
And I just want to say thank you, each one of you, for putting in so much hard work. Your work matters. And so your volunteerism and your sacrifice that you're making for the state really makes a difference in how things go. And as somebody who's I haven't been around for that long, but for 5 years, the TRC, these ideas, they come around and people consult this, and these reports are consulted regularly, especially when there's opportunities for change or things a little dire. And all of you guys were this can be technically challenging to come up to speed with all of this, because all of you guys work in tax, but in your own little way. So you guys did a great job in coming up to speed and really mastering the material and making sound decisions based on that. So I just want to thank all of you guys for your service and applaud you for what you guys have done.
You're a great leader. I don't want to say word deal. I'll just say process. With great success.
I second that. And
Second that,
when we were all waiting for, does anybody want to be chair, there was crickets. And everybody's kind of sort of. But you really stepped up to the plate. So thank
Well,
you.
it was a pleasure working with all of you. I really admire your contributions to this, and it's great that we had a chance to meet each other at least once.
It would be good if this bill does go before the legislature, go through the first committee, if everybody could kind of pull it together, be there at the meeting, if you could be there, to hear the comments and the first round of questioning as it goes through the process. There'll be enough, probably 2-day notice, but when it gets heard, but I think when it gets in early, normally it goes through, you'll get a feel for where it goes, and you'll be able to go to whoever the committee chair is, and kind of keep your manalo to that point, so that if there's any clarifications, he knows how it goes. They usually have an answer before it gets to committee, right? So right, isn't that true? So all of your expertise that goes in advance of it being heard, I think that's where you got to get your thing through. Once it comes to committee, it's almost, it's already. In my opinion, just.
Thank you for those
Yeah.
comments. And assuming that we will be getting a hearing, I hope that I'll see you there.
One question I forgot to ask Jonathan. We have to turn it in on Monday, yeah. So do you have yet the final from Dr. Kaufman? So, yeah.
I think that in a pinch, the citations that I do have to the updated study, I know where those are, sort of in the, like, similar in the original study. So I can convert them sites to the original.
My sense is they're really close, so I don't know if it's you or me or who reaches out to her and says, we gotta turn this thing in on Monday, you're gonna be ready. I'm assuming you need it on Friday if we're gonna turn it in on Monday, right?
So, yeah,
Want me to reach out? Are you gonna reach? I'm curious.
I haven't had any contact.
Okay, I'll reach out and say, we need to get it by Friday, really, yeah.
If you could send
No,
all
Friday
the
morning.
commissioners this, then I can just respond to this and they'll get it all one place and then you get our names and our titles and
So
then
that's a good idea.
it's just so easy to hit reply all and just, or reply to you and then put it all in. You can get that in advance without rushing last minute on Saturday night, Sunday.
And this is a logistical question, but do I remember correctly that the prior reports are actually signed by the commissioners?
Oh, right.
And
There is
do
a
we have to
transmittal-
do that?
There's a transmittal letter.
And how do we?
Yeah, I have a draft transmittal letter that I drafted. It's just basically to get the letterhead right.
Can we do that right now?
But I mean, how do,
Yeah,
how do we
Yeah,
actually?
that would be great. While
No,
we're
just
here.
go,
How about Wednesday?
Oh,
I think we'll go ahead and
We just gotta get
adjourn the
it.
meeting,
Yeah.
but if you can all stick around for just a few more minutes to
Somebody go print that?
Yes.
sign this.
So I fly off to the Wild Yonder on Friday.
Yeah, that's the
So,
can you mind just formally, formally ending the meeting?
okay, yes, today's meeting is adjourned and I believe that this is the last meeting that is required. Thank you all very, very much for all of your hard work on this.
Thank you. Chair.